He's not out of HP. No, Muty, why are you choking it here? Okay. GG. What a choke at the end.
On 23rd of August 2022, Half-Life was beaten in 25 minutes and 52 seconds by Muty, breaking the 26 minutes mark for the first time in this category. And as of making of this video, he's the current world record holder of the scripted category. This run is done on easy difficulty on Van version of the game, which is an older version of Half-Life. It's also the scripted category, and unlike its scriptless counterpart, scripts are allowed and will be used throughout the run. If you dislike the use of scripts in this run, I will link the current scriptless world record also performed by Muty in the description of this video. So what are scripts? In summary, scripts are a string of commands which aid the runner in performing certain tricks. Every time Muty uses a script, a message will appear in the in-game chat like so. Let's go over the most important rules of this category. The timer starts when you enter the first map just after the introduction sequence, C1AO, and ends when you defeat the final boss of the game, Nihilnath. Runners must use BunnyModXT. BunnyModXT is a program which injects into the game and provides additional options, information, and accurate in-game time. It's mainly used for recording demos, small files which contain every input of the runner and can be played back in-game. It also helps with run verification. FPS cannot exceed past 100. Half-Life 1 has a hard FPS limit of 100. Also, your player movement is affected by the FPS value. The higher it is, the faster you accelerate in the air by strafing. People with high-end PCs could easily gain unfair advantage by having higher FPS, and thus, limiting it to 100 eliminates that issue. We will talk more about the FPS later and how it affects the game in various ways. Scripts containing commands related to movement and camera view are disallowed. Also disallowed are fast-fire scripts, which are exclusive to the most recent version of Half-Life, and any external macros such as from AutoHotkey or hardware configuration programs. And lastly, here are all the allowed scripts for this category. Every script here is used and I will be going over what each of them does during the run. Now that we know the rules, we can go over the first and most important technique used in the run, bunny hopping. You might recognize it from other games which are running on the Source or Gold Source engine. Notable examples are CSGO, CS 1.6, Portal 2, Left 4 Dead 2 and Titanfall. Bunny hopping, or B-hopping for short, allows us to gain speed while jumping and strafing mid-air. Doing this trace in quick succession allows us to gain speed very quickly. B-hopping will be constantly used throughout the run. Saving is also very important. Saves will store the current game progress and can be used to come back to them in case things will go horribly wrong. You won't see the saved prompt when a save is made, but I will indicate when a save is loaded by this icon, shown on the right side of the screen. Saves are also used to skip screen transitions and to perform ammo duplication on grunts, which I'll explain later in the run. Lastly, I'll briefly go over units. Unit is the standard measurement used in Half-Life. It describes the length, width and height of every object. 1 unit is the smallest size a square brush can have. Before we get into the run, I also wanna mention the speedometer shown here. It shows the current speed of the player in units per second, or UPS. Immediately when the run starts, Muty will go into a corner of this starting area in order to prepare doing a wall strafe. Wall strafe is performed by strafing alongside a wall, and by doing so, we are able to reach up to 480 UPS. The current goal now is to grab the HEV suit. Muty will be up to it and along the way will greet a fellow scientist.
Hello.
After getting the suit, he'll also get some armor from the locker, which is necessary to skip a puzzle in the Office Complex chapter, and then continue on his way to the test chamber. By slamming into the scientist, Muty does a complete stop, then blocks Barney and lowers his FPS to 8, then back to 100. This is one of the effects of FPS. Lowering FPS to 8 makes the NPCs turn faster and saves a bit of time. Now the runner is going to skip the elevator by jumping down, grabbing the ladder mid-air and then jumping off of it. Muty decreases his FPS to 4 to barely squeeze through the door as it's opening and not wait for it to fully open. This is called a 4 FPS trick. Every frame the game performs these 3 steps in this specific order. Step 1. Player movement. Step 2. Check which triggers and entities the player interacted with. And step 3. Entity logic and physics. On a certain frame, while on the first step, the player moves inside the trigger. Then, in the second step, the game realizes that the player is now inside the trigger and during the third step will fire said trigger, signaling the door to start opening. Also on the third step, after the trigger is fired, it checks the current frame time for this frame and then moves it by the frame time value. Frame time is calculated by dividing 1 with the FPS value, here being 4, resulting in a frame time of 0.25 seconds. Effectively, moving the door the same distance as if it started moving in the beginning of the frame, when the player was not inside the trigger yet. Then, the runner will try to make this frame as long as possible by making it 4 FPS. If you start far enough from the trigger, but still make it inside the trigger in a single 4 FPS frame, you essentially get the game to open the door by that entire amount in that frame. Located here is a change level trigger which, as the name implies, changes the current level to the one specified as the target map. Going back and forth through it unsticks the NPCs in the next room earlier, which allows us to perform the first NPC abuse. This NPC will be pushed towards the door, opening it earlier, skipping the cutscene that normally plays here, saving around 25 seconds. FPS is lowered again to 20 to make the scientist turn faster. This cutscene before entering the test chamber cannot be skipped. However, Muty will still save some time here by pushing the scientists closer to the eye scanners, which minimizes the distance they need to travel, opening the door sooner. Now, while we wait for the doors to open, I'll explain object boosting, or in short, ABO. This technique will be used throughout the run to gain speed quickly by using movable objects, and here to skip to the beginning of the next chapter, Unforeseen Consequences. By exploiting a flaw in the object pushing mechanic, using a +use command at 100 FPS, we are able to accelerate the object and ourselves to a very high amount of speed. This speed can be carried through by jumping and chaining it into a B-hop. Object boosting is very precise to do, so Muty will be using a script which will help with executing this technique. Upcoming trick is called Test Chamber Skip. Located high above the test chamber, there's a change level trigger which loads the next map and begins the second chapter. However, we are unable to reach this trigger by normal means, but by object boosting with the only movable object located in the test chamber, the Zen crystal sample, and using this slope as a ramp, the runner is able to launch himself into the trigger and change the map earlier than intended. The runner will use his superhuman mashing skills to press the button as early as possible. Now, while we wait for the test sample to arrive, I quickly wanna thank the Source Runs community. Quadrazit, Yalter, QuickDev, Proteaus, Maxim, Dot, Fruic, Materunner and Muty. This video wouldn't be possible without them. They have dedicated a lot of time speedrunning, optimizing, finding new bugs and tricks, and along the way documenting every single detail surrounding the inner workings of Half-Life. I will be linking their channels and also provide a link to the Source Runs Discord server in the description of this video. I am very happy to see that this game still garners a lot of attention, and even to this day, new tricks are still being discovered after over 20 years of the game's initial release date. I personally got very interested in the game after watching the segmented run of Half-Life done in 20 minutes and 41 seconds. It's an incredible video to watch, and if you haven't seen it, I highly recommend you to check it out. If you're interested in running this game, there are tons of resources, tutorials and guides available online which you can use to get started on speedrunning Half-Life. So we are still waiting for the test sample to arrive. In the meantime, check out this awesome rotating bull squid. Sick. Now that the test sample has finally arrived, Muty will perform the test chamber skip with additional help over script and begin the next chapter. Using the speed and height gained by performing the skip, Muty will land in the window overseeing the test chamber and skip a major portion of this map. Loading a save here removes the black screen which would normally obstruct the view after beginning this chapter. By limiting FPS to 4 when approaching the lasers, Muty can jump through them and avoid damage. This is different to the 4 FPS trick from before. Trip mice and lasers check if a player is intersecting with them every 10th of a second, so it's possible for a player to get partially inside the laser, then, with a low FPS frame, pass through the laser completely and not trigger it, even if the 10th of a second check was in the middle of that frame. After grabbing the crowbar, he will proceed up the elevator shaft, using the ladder in a special way which doubles the normal climbing speed. This trick is called ladder speeding. While on the ladder, look upwards, hold the forward key and begin strafing in parallel to the ladder. Whenever the runner uses a ladder, this trick will be used, as it's the fastest way to climb them. Jumping through a small gap in the door skips opening it and preserves movement speed. Muty is slowing down here in order to make the turn, jump through the vent and continue his big-up chain. Along the way he will grab a pistol, double-duck through the broken door and press the button which loads in the next map. Double-ducking elevates the player up to 35 units above the ground. With this, we can do small jumps which preserve our movement speed and gives us the possibility to make adjustments to our b-hubs, fit into gaps more precisely and perform duck tapping, which I'll explain later when it's used. An example of using the double-duck in order to adjust a b-hub chain will be used right here. Turning this valve will raise the water levels up, which is required to exit out of the sewers. Muty skips this elevator as well by jumping down and bouncing off of this angled surface. Grabbing more armor here and after distinct with a crate, he's able to make the jump onto the other side and skip the rest of this chapter. Muty absolutely refuses taking any elevator on his way and will skip this one too. Overlapping with the elevator doors is a trigger which checks whether the player is inside the elevator. Standing next to the entrance, the player's hitbox just barely touches it and meets the requirements needed for the skip to work. All that's left to do now is to press the button through the wall, which closes the elevator and triggers the map change, skipping around 10 seconds. Right at the beginning of this chapter, Muty will grab a health pack and the last bit of armor required for the upcoming electricity skip. There are broken wires blocking the way, killing the player attempting to go through them. The intended way of going past them is by going through this vent, into this room, then switching off the power. But that's slow. Gathering at least 70 armor allows the player to brute force through them and skip this puzzle. After jumping into the vent, he will kill the 3 head crabs blocking his way and continue onwards. Normally, the boxes here are used to reach the ladder. Instead, he will jump off of a headcrab to reach it. He also wallsters here to accelerate faster and to avoid the headcrab attack. He then does an object boost with a crate and breaks the 2 boxes blocking his way. Taking the secret path is faster and also to pick up a shotgun. Killing these vortigons is necessary so they won't attack Barney in the next room. Talking about Barney, he will be used to perform the next NPC abuse. This NPC abuse is a bit more complicated compared to the last one, and we need to explain a couple things first. NPCs use info nodes scattered around the map as points to which they can travel to. Shooting Barney will obviously get him mad, and will try to kill the player at all cost. And I do mean it. Barney will follow the player and shoot him whenever he has a chance to do so. He also has basic instincts and will prioritize running away from any possible danger that's close to him, for example, grenades. We can exploit his 3 mechanics by shooting him, making him follow us, then throw precise grenades to scare him and lead him towards this info node located on the other side of the door, which he'll open for us, skipping a map in the process and the rest of this chapter. Muty shoots Barney in the face to anger him, takes a detour to grab grenades and then begins the NPC abuse. He is now at the end of this chapter and all that's left to do now is to get up the elevator shaft, break the vent and proceed to the next chapter. We've got hostiles. We won't see much of this chapter because Muty skips the entirety of it. During this cutscene, the scientist begs Barney to open the silo door. Unfortunately, Barney is killed by a zombie before he can press the button which opens it. What the scientist doesn't know is that he can open the security door himself and give the player access to press the button. We just have to make him do it. And that's right, yet another NPC abuse. Shooting the scientist as he's running towards the window stops the scripted sequence. It also makes him scared and tries to run away from the player. It just so happens that blocking him for a bit while he's on this line makes him want to run away into this room and open the door leading to it, skipping this chapter and saving up to 20 minutes. Muty will also throw a grenade to kill the scientist after he opens the door, so he won't be blocking the doorway. Rest in peace, fellow scientist. Muty object boosts to a platform, calls in an elevator, then grabs more grenades, a health pack and starts cooking a nade in order to prepare for a damage boost. Jumping down and narrowly avoiding the lift is faster than waiting for it to arrive. Upon landing, he will do a jump back. This trick allows you to land without taking any fall damage. The game applies fall damage if a check whether the player is on the ground succeeds. These checks are done at the end of the movement frames. When a jump back is performed, the player starts mid-air and ends up still being mid-air in one movement frame, while falling on the ground and a jump happens in between. During the fall, the player is in a crouched state. Then, when they uncrouch, their bounding box needs to be within 0 to 2 units above the ground. This classifies as being on the ground and actions like jumping can be performed. The game thinks that the player never was on the ground during their fall and thus doesn't apply any fall damage. Jump backs are dependent on the FPS value, as on different values, a frame where a jump back can be performed may not exist. This jump back, for example, is done on 90.909 FPS. After the jump back, the runner will get some more HP to have enough for the upcoming damage boost. Damage boost is done by taking any form of damage which deals knockback, most commonly explosives. By cooking the grenade earlier, he will immediately throw it upon selecting it. The grenade will explode behind the player, dealing knockback and adding speed. He also lowers his FPS to get further away from the grenade, receiving less damage. Breaking these boxes drops 2 health packs. Grabs even more HP and armor here and then proceeds to use the first elevator in this one. In this chapter, the main goal is to kill the tentacles by activating a rocket engine. The player needs to activate power, oxygen and fuel in order to start it. The intended way of going through this chapter is by first encountering the tentacles, starting oxygen and fuel, and lastly turning on the power. Muty will be doing all of that in reverse. Jump back here to avoid fall damage, then 2 grenades to kill the Houndites which would have blocked him on the way back. He then performs an edge back of this pipe. Edge back in similar fashion to jump back allows the player to avoid fall damage by sliding off of a block's edge. Since the player slides off a block before a movement frame finishes, the game again thinks that the player never was on the ground during their fall and doesn't apply any fall damage. This zombie would also block his way, so it has to go. Edge back off of a button, then returns back up. He will also get some HP for the next damage boost by using a health charger located on the other side of the wall. Object boost here to accelerate quicker, then with some precise B-hubs, he's able to launch himself by shooting a barrel and continue his way onto the next objective, starting oxygen and fuel. Landing in the water negates all fall damage. He will then jump down, catch the ladder and turn on the fan, which will propel him upwards. Double duck into the vent to have more speed entering it. All that's left to do now is to start oxygen and fuel, then continue to the final objective, killing the tentacles. The tentacles are required to kill as there's a barrier under them, which blocks the way to the end of this chapter. This door can be opened by turning the access lever through the wall. Before the map changes, he will stand by this door, opening it when the next map loads in. Muty starts the rocket engine through the wall. He gets stuck by jumping into this corner and strafing into it. This is called a collision anchor. If two walls make an angle below 90 degrees, strafing into the corner will make the player stuck. It's only used once in the run. Interacting with the scientist will heal the player for 25 HP, but only if the player has less than 50. The developers never thought that it's possible to enter the tentacle chamber while the rocket engines are active, so there are no triggers which would deal damage to the player. Hugging this wall allows Muty to swim upwards a bit faster. After coming out of the water, he'll double that to get a bit of height, catch the ladder and then heal up and get some armor. Next trick uses two techniques, sharking and boosting by rapidly touching a trigger push. Sharking is performed by being in the water and holding space. This trick will make the player float and preserve some speed achieved by strafing or other means. Standing in the trigger push will apply speed to the player in the yaw direction of the trigger. Here are two push triggers which apply 100 speed and are overlapping with each other. Touching these triggers at the same time will apply the speed of those two triggers combined. By swimming into those triggers, then spamming crouch, the player will rapidly touch those triggers and get a lot of speed. Sharking will be used to preserve some of that speed while in the water. Also, at the end of this stream, there's a trigger push which gives 600 speed. Swimming into it and entering this trigger will launch the player upwards and give them 600 UPS. Muty will be using all of this to quickly swim towards the end of this chapter, barely avoiding the barrels along the way and then launch himself into the pipe. After performing a jump bug, he grabs some trip mines and health, and then will prepare for the next skip, which skips the entirety of the power up chapter. In this corridor, there's a change level trigger which loads in the next map. By using a series of wait commands, it's possible to delay this transition and then go to a point in the current map where the next one overlaps. With this, when the map changes, the player is placed at the end of the next chapter, skipping the entirety of it. Muty will be using this crate to object this into the position. The player here is supposed to use the train from the last chapter, but it's much slower than b-hopping and won't be needed. Here he places two trip mines in order to climb this wall. When trip mines are placed, they become solid after they get activated. Because those two walls are not connected, the player is able to stand on a pixel-wide seam between them and jump off of it. Muty skips this puzzle by jumping across the gap, grabs some SMG grenades and heals up along the way. This crate will be used to gain speed, which will be carried up to the next portion of this chapter. For FPS here to go through the trip mines, then jump bugs and kills the soldier to avoid getting damage. Damage boost to get speed and skip using the train. This chapter heavily focuses on b-hopping on small ledges in tight corridors. Muty also has to plan his b-hops ahead in order to jump over the trip mines. This is a very long and precise b-hop chain to do in one go, and Muty did it masterfully. He will now take the second elevator in the run. The exit is obstructed by explosive crates. Muty will shoot them to clear it, also killing a soldier standing alongside it. He grabs the dropped SMG, more nades from the crate and continues the b-hop. A precise lineup is used for an edgeback off of a rail. He nades the grunt standing in the corridor, then two more standing by the blast door. One more nade for the three grunts across, then jumps up to the window to start a rocket through the wall. Saving and loading here duplicates ammo dropped from the killed grunt. This glitch is called ammo duplication. Whenever an enemy is killed that drops a pickup, saving the rig its dying animation and loading that save resets its animation and drops the pickups again. This process can be looped indefinitely. Grenade here to kill the two standing grunts in order to heal up through the wall. The runner now has to wait until the blast door on the earlier map opens.
The doors open after a certain amount of time has passed, after the rocket disappears. In the meantime, he will get more health and ammo. Muty times the doors opening by shooting 2 pistol magazines and 3 crowbar hits. Jump back, then more health and a bit of armor. The train is required for a scripted sequence, which breaks open the gates blocking the way. This barrel is destroyed to get a straight path during the swim. Swimming in the water has a fixed maximum amount of speed, so going on the straightest path is always the quickest. Also, there's a bug happening whenever the runner switches weapons. This is purely visual and doesn't affect the gameplay. Quick B-hop chain to skip a puzzle. And again here. Then an object boost onto the other side, skipping yet another puzzle. Shooting an SMG nade here scares a Vortigaunt into opening a door. Yes, even aliens can open the doors, yet Gordon cannot. Couple object boosts to get to the next elevator quicker, grabbing some health along the way for an upcoming damage boost. This crate drops an armor pack, which will help with withstanding a couple shots from the assassins in this room. A valve is used through the wall to open the garage doors, and lastly he destroys a crate dropping grenades, which will be used for a later skip. Lowering FPS to 4 here allows the player to enter a trigger without activating a black screen. However, it does activate a timer which will teleport the player into a cutscene. This barely allows the runner to backtrack and get the grenades dropped earlier. After grabbing the grenades, he comes back into the Apprehension room and gets teleported into another room opposite to it. The player is able to use the health charger through the wall by simply going forward and left a bit. Having at least 95 HP is required for the next skip.
Where are we taking this Freeman guy? Topside for questioning. What the hell for? We got him. Let's kill him now. And if they find the body? Body? What body?
Save loading here removes a black screen for the runner. Again here, then 2 jumps to time the removal of an invisible box surrounding the player. The moving walls are actually funk_train entities, which means they can be used like a train. Muty will speed them up in order to break a crate blocking the way quicker. A nice straight jump to grab the crowbar, then continue his way onto the next chapter, Residue Processing. Before the chapter began, the player was stripped out of all weapons, but because Muty picked up the grenades after his weapons were taken away, he still has them in his inventory. Double duck into the pipe, then a short B-hop in it. Object boosting using a lineup will launch Muty directly into the pipe with some speed left over for the next B-hop chain. Now he is going to perform the Residue Processing clip, or RP clip for short. Every frame, the game checks whether the player collides with a wall by running a trace from the current position to the final position. If the player's trace is going through a wall, the game will stop the player at that wall. Collision checking in water works differently compared to being on the ground. If the player is in the water, the game only checks if the final position is not inside of a wall. By having a large amount of speed and being in the water, the player is able to go through walls if they manage to do it within one frame. The floor here is 16 units in height. Having at least 1900 UPS is enough to clip through the floor during the short time window. However, entering the water reduces speed significantly, so the player has to be in the water for a very short time before their speed gets reduced. A grenade is thrown for a damage boost, then FPS is lowered to 20 before entering the water. The player will be underwater for 2 frames, then pass through the wall in the next frame. After successfully performing the clip, Muty will grab a revolver, armor and satchels. He skips going through the machinery by jumping off of a lever. This also allows him to one-cycle lateral obstacles without having to stop. Four FPS to pass through the 2 trip mines blocking the way. Next chapter, Questionable Ethics, gives the player access to the most useful weapon in the speedrun, the tow cannon, also known as the ghost gun. Muty skips this puzzle by jumping over the electrified fence. Shooting this button opens the door.
Hey, it's no good up there, it's all sealed off.
He takes a wide turn in this corridor to be able to duck tap on the stairs. Duck tapping is done by using a script which double ducks whenever the player touches the ground. Most of the times, it's used to go up the stairs without losing speed. 4 FPS to go through doors without losing speed. Shooting this trip mine starts a scripted sequence, then grab some armor and trip mines for later. This grunt is good for an SMG. Quick flick to nade a soldier so he won't shoot the scientists. An NPC is required for an eye scanner at the end of this chapter. This scientist will follow the runner until he loads in the next map. Muty is now going to get the ghost gun. Going left here activates a cutscene. He then nades 2 soldiers and duplicates ammo dropped from them. While doing the dupe, he'll get some ghost ammo and heal up. Now that the runner picked it up, I'll explain why it's so useful in the run. The ghost gun has 2 firing modes. It can be shot in quick succession or charge up to fire a powerful beam. The second mode, when fired, also deals recoil to the player, opposite to the shooting direction. Ghost boosting uses this recoil mechanic to gain speed quickly. Using a script, the gun is fired backwards for 1 frame. This will apply the recoil speed without the need of turning around and firing the gun. This script will often be used whenever the runner ghost boosts. Muty is now going to lead the scientist to the eye scanner. Notice how Muty has less than 50 HP. Having anything more than that might make the scientist not follow the player. While he waits for the doors to open, he will charge up his armor. Right at the start of surface tension, Muty quickly gains speed, picks up health, then does a massive burst to skip fighting a helicopter. Here the runner survives the fall by performing a slide back. When a player touches the ground and slides up a wall or a slope at the same time during the landing, the game assumes that the player is actually going up instead and hasn't touched the ground during their fall. Picks up ghost ammo from the crates, then boosts up the wall using a satchel and ladder speeding. A valve which opens a hatch on the next map can be used through a wall here. In this part, the player is supposed to traverse along the cliffside. Muty is going to skip all of it by lining up, then ghost boost to launch himself to the end of this map. Also dodges a head grab for extra style. On this map, the player has to destroy a tank before going forwards. Muty skips this fight by ghost boosting and uses this slope as a ramp to launch off it. This tank is also avoided. Another boost off of a ramp to go straight to the end of this map. The runner will shoot at this explosive crate to lower its HP, then with a shotgun, destroy the 2 crates at the same time. The crate on the right is registered as being destroyed twice, by the explosion and by the shotgun. This will duplicate the pickups dropped from the crate. This is called box item duplication, and is used only once in the run. Muty picks up a hornet gun, lots of health and more ammo for the ghost gun. The runner doesn't have enough HP to damage boost up the roof, so he takes a detour to grab some armor and then boost up. Charging up the ghost before using the artillery cannon will charge it up for less ammo. Muty goes out of bounds, then quickly returns back to skip a portion of this map. Up next, the runner will do the infinite health door glitch. Every door in Half-Life has a damage inflicted when blocked value associated with them. As the name implies, when a door gets blocked, the entity blocking it will be dealt damage every frame until the door gets unblocked. This door, however, deals -1 damage when blocked. Dealing negative damage increases health instead. To get stuck in it, an NPC has to open the door, then the player will walk into it as it's opening, which blocks it. Launching a grenade here will scare a grunt into running away from it. Shooting will lead the grunt towards the player. Lastly, a grenade will scare it into opening the door, then Muty walks into it, gets stuck and kills the grunt. The runner gets 100 HP every second and reaches 1738 HP, which is enough for the rest of this run. After the damage burst, he starts cooking a nade and instantly switches to the ghost gun. This gate can be broken in one shot by shooting it in a precise spot. The beam from the ghost gun will ricochet and hit it twice, dealing enough damage to destroy it. Because he started cooking a grenade earlier, it will instantly explode upon selection. Muty object boosts, then breaks a window which would have blocked him. Save loading here resets Vortigund's attack animation. In this ladder hatch there is a change level trigger, and just like in Blast Pit, a portion of this map can be skipped by delaying a level transition. He starts cooking a grenade, enters a change level trigger, delays it, and then comes back up. Goes into this corner and then damage boosts into the direction where the next map overlaps. Shooting the elevator doors with a Hornet gun as they are opening reverses their direction and closes them. The Hornet gun is unique. It doesn't hit scan like most weapons. Instead, it fires flying hornets which interact with other entities. For example, doors can be blocked and reversed by firing at them. This skips a bit of time which would have been spent waiting for them to open. The same elevator skip trick from the Unforeseen Consequences chapter is also used here. This tank has to be used to destroy the gates blocking the way, then breaks those two crates to get some ghost ammo. The Hornet gun is again used to close the silo doors quicker. Muty skips this elevator by jumping down and doing an edge bug. He then does a self-ghost by shooting a crate. Some walls cannot be shot through with a ghost gun. When the player fires a shot at a wall like this, the beam ricochets and hits the player instead, which launches them upwards. Muty lines up a shot with a ghost gun, hitting two alien grunts with one beam, nades an alien grunt behind him and finishes off the last one. A grenade is thrown to force a scientist into opening a door in the next room, skipping a cutscene. Another self-ghost to boost up and get to the elevator a bit quicker. Muty prepares a nade here for a water clip, which he'll do right after he gets out of this elevator. This pipe is thin enough to be clipped through and doesn't require a lot of speed. 2 damage boosts in a row to skip a platforming section. And one more boost here which skips yet another platforming section. The runner shoots Barney through the doors to anger him. He'll now run towards the player, opening the doors in the process. Then an SMG nade to scare Barney and make him open the next set of doors, skipping a cutscene. In the meantime, Muty picks up a gluon gun and more ammo. Inside of this teleporter, there's a triggered teleport which moves the player into a special room and begins the transition to the next map. Unfortunately, it's blocked off by a trigger hurt which deals 10,000 damage at once. Stepping into it would kill the player instantly. Trigger hurt deals damage to all entities which enter it, then again after half a second.
Using a Hornet gun, the player shoots a Hornet into the trigger herd, making it receive all the damage. Then in a short amount of time, reach the trigger teleport without receiving any damage.
Hello, Freeman. I'm up here. Try to get a long jump if you must, but
Right
hurry
at the
up.
start of the Zen chapter, he does 2 ghost boosts, prepares a grenade and jump backs on landing. A grenade is thrown into this corner and gets partially stuck in a wall. The explosion destroys a net block in the way and a cage which releases butterflies needed for the next sequence. Muty opens the pedestals on which the butterflies will land on. When all of them are in place, the teleporting sequence begins. Before he gets teleported, he lowers FPS to 6 and then saves to skip a short animation which Gonarch does at the beginning of the fight. Lowering FPS helps with timing the save load, as the time saved from it can vary between 2 to 5 seconds. In this run it was around 4. In Gonarch's Lair, the main goal is to defeat Gonarch, the boss of this chapter. It has 3 phases, and on each map 3 points to which it can travel to and be attacked. After enough damage was dealt to the boss, it will go to the next point in a predefined order. Since the runner knows exactly where it's going to stop, it's just a matter of getting into the position and dealing enough damage. Before going to the next map, Muty picks up a weapon box, which most importantly contains satchels needed for the next skip. The second phase is identical to the first one, just a different map. The third phase is skipped. This part of the floor breaks when Gonarch is defeated, but by using 4 satchels and 5 trip mines, the player is able to deal enough damage to destroy it, without the need of defeating the boss. Muty lines up for a damage boost into a teleporter at the beginning of the next map. Interloper is the second to last chapter of this game. It combines b-hopping through tight corners with a lot of ghosts and damage boosting, also some obstacles along the way. Shooting the bottom of this spot with a Hornet gun prevents the alien grunt from spawning. Muty prepares a grenade here, which will be used quite soon. 2 damage boosts to go straight into the teleporter. He uses his last satchel to boost towards the final chapter, to fight with Nihilnath. The glowing gun is used at the start of the fight to deal a bit of damage to the boss. When the black screen disappears, he quickly breaks the 3 crystals which the Nihilnath uses to regenerate health. Switching between weapons maximizes the damage dealt to it, and circling around the boss prevents it from attacking the player. And lastly, he boosts up to deal the final hit to the Nihilnath, beating the game. Hey, you've made it till the end. I hope you have liked the video, and if you'd like to see more speedrun explanations, please share your thoughts in the comments. Make sure to check out Muty's YouTube channel and his Twitch page, where he frequently streams his speedruns. Thanks for watching.